I didn't come back to the ranch looking for anything but a place to breathe. The city had choked me long enough. Its noise, its judgments, the way it pressed in until I couldn't remember who I was. Out here, the isolation felt like a mercy. Wide skies and empty fields that swallowed secrets whole. But as my tires hit the gravel drive, crunching under the weight of the old truck, I felt the pull anyway. The barn loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette against the fading sun, promising shadows where eyes couldn't follow. This was just a visit, I told myself, a way to dodge the questions back home about why I'd run, to avoid facing how alone I really was. Yet something stirred, forbidden and familiar, drawing me toward the one person who'd always seen too much. The path wound closer, gravel biting my boots, leading me straight to her. The dust-laden air hit me first as I stepped out, thick and familiar, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant rain that never quite came. The ranch house squatted low against the horizon, its weathered boards creaking under the porch steps as I climbed them, each one a reluctant echo of childhood summers I'd tried to forget. Mom had remarried years ago, blending our fractured family into something that looked whole from the outside. Stepdad's broad laugh, his daughters folding in like they'd always been there. But the watchful eyes were the same. Mom's quick glances, stepdad's steady gaze over dinner, as if they could spot the cracks in me before I even unpacked my bag. I pushed open the screen door, the hinges whining in protest. And there she was, Mara, my stepsister, leaning against the kitchen counter with a mug in hand. She'd changed since I'd last seen her, 2 years back. The girl who'd trailed me through fields as a teen was gone. In her place stood a woman, tall and grounded, her flannel shirt rolled to her elbows, revealing forearms tanned from endless ranch work. Her dark hair fell loose, framing eyes that held a quiet depth, like the riverbed after a flood, still and knowing. She set the mug down, wiping her hands on her jeans, and our gazes locked for the first time in too long. That glance sparked something guarded in me, a curiosity laced with caution. It wasn't just the way she moved now, competent and unhurried, but the subtle shift in her demeanor, the faint smile that didn't quite hide the questions she wasn't asking. "Elena," she said, voice low and steady, like the rumble of thunder over the plains. "Didn't think you'd make it." I nodded, forcing a casual shrug, but my chest tightened. Past wounds surfaced unbidden. The hidden desires I'd buried in the city, the crushes I'd never voiced, the fear of what family might say if they knew. Here, with her so close, those old aches felt raw again, exposed under the kitchen's yellow light. We fell into the rhythm of the evening, polite words skirting the edges of what lingered unspoken. Mom bustled in, arms full of plates, her chatter filling the air about crops and town gossip. But I caught Mara's eyes on me again, lingering just a beat too long. Stepdad joined, his questions probing. How was the city job? Why the sudden visit? And I mumbled answers, avoiding the truth. I'd fled a life that demanded I hide, only to land back where hiding felt even harder. Mara didn't push, but her presence pulled, a subtle gravity drawing me toward the edges of the room, away from the watchful family circle. As plates cleared, the tension coiled tighter. I helped with dishes, our hands brushing once over a soapy glass, accidental but electric, sending a jolt through my fingers. She didn't pull away fast enough, and in that moment, I saw it. The same guarded curiosity mirrored back. But the emotional blocks rose like fences. Memories of stolen glances in our youth, desires I'd locked away to fit the ranch's narrow expectations. What if they saw? What if she did, fully? The fear gnawed, mixing with an unwelcome warmth. I dried my hands, stepping back, but Mara tilted her head, as if sensing the storm inside me. Evening chores called, the sun dipping low, painting the yard in long shadows. Mom waved us off toward the barn. Hay bales needed stacking, fences checked. Her voice trailing about how good it was to have us working together again. My pulse quickened at the isolation it promised. The barn's dim interior, a refuge from prying eyes. Mara grabbed her jacket, glancing my way with that quiet confidence, and I followed, boots thudding on the porch. The air cooled as we walked, dust settling around us, but the pull grew stronger, unspoken histories whispering in the wind. We headed into the fading light, toward the barn's open maw, where the real tension waited to unfold. The barn door swung open with a groan. releasing a wave of hay scent that wrapped around us like an old blanket. It was sharp and sweet, mingling with the faint tang of aged wood and earth. Mara moved ahead, flipping on a single bulb that cast long shadows across the stacked bales. I followed, my boots sinking into the soft dirt floor, each step pulling me deeper into this space we'd shared as kids. But never like this. Not with the weight of years pressing down. We started with the hay, her hands efficient as she hefted a bale, muscles shifting under her flannel. I grabbed the next, struggling against its bulk, my city-softened arms protesting. She noticed, but didn't comment, just positioned herself beside me to guide it onto the stack. Our shoulders brushed, brief, accidental, and warmth spread from the contact, uninvited. Like this, she murmured, her voice low, demonstrating the twist of wrists that made it easier. Her competence was quiet, steady, a rhythm honed by seasons on this land. It contrasted my turmoil, the way my thoughts tangled like overgrown weeds, pulling at roots I thought I'd buried. As we worked, vulnerabilities slipped out in fragments. A bale slipped from my grip, tumbling back, and I cursed under my breath, frustration hot in my chest. Mara steadied it without a word, but her eyes met mine, holding just long enough to see the crack. "The city's changed you," she said finally, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. Rope coiled nearby, rough and fibrous. I picked it up to tie off a loose stack, its texture biting into my palms, grounding me. Or maybe it just showed you. I paused, the rope's coarseness mirroring the pull inside me. Showed me what? My voice came out sharper than intended, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned against a post, arms crossed, her gaze drifting to the rafters where dust motes danced in the dim light. That you don't fit the boxes they make. I remember you out here as a kid, always wandering off alone, like you were chasing something no one else saw. Her words hinted at histories we'd never named, the late nights I'd spent staring at the ceiling, wondering about girls in ways that felt wrong under this roof. Unspoken, but there in the way she'd sometimes linger near my door back then, as if she understood. The proximity grew as the chores dragged on. We mended a fence panel next, kneeling side by side in the straw, our knees inches apart. The hay scratched at my jeans, its dry whisper filling the pauses. Mara's fingers worked the wire with practiced ease, calluses catching the light, while mine fumbled, nicking my thumb. A drop of blood welled up, and she reached over without thinking, pressing her thumb to it. The touch lingered, her skin warm against mine, pulse points almost sinking. "Careful," she said softly, her breath stirring the air between us. Intimacy built in those small spaces, shared tools, accidental grazes, subtle as the ropes give under tension. But fear lingered, shadows of the family beyond the barn walls. I could hear faint calls from the house, Mom's voice carrying on the wind, Stepdad's truck rumbling back from the fields. What if they walked in? What if they saw the way my eyes traced her profile, the curve of her neck damp with effort? Exposure felt like a storm brewing, ready to uproot everything. I pulled my hand away, focusing on the wire, but Mara didn't push. She just nodded, as if she felt the same edge, the same need to hide what was stirring. We finished the last bale as the light outside faded, the bulb's glow sharpening the lines of her face. Rope secured, fence patched, but the real work had just begun, unraveling the guards we'd built. Nightfall crept in, cool air seeping through the cracks, pulling us deeper into the barn's shadowed refuge. The world outside dimmed, leaving only us and the quiet building between. The barn became our sanctuary that night, a world apart from the family's distant chatter filtering through the walls like muffled echoes. Inside, the air hung heavy with hay and earth, the single bulb flickering overhead, casting pools of light that left corners in deep shadow. Out there, plates clinked in the sink, voices rose in easy laughter over coffee. Mara's younger sister teasing about town boys, Mom's warm replies. But here, it all faded to a hum, swallowed by the wood beams and stacked bales. This place had always been a hideout for me as a kid, a spot to escape the noise of blended family dinners and unspoken rules. Now, with Mara beside me, it felt like more, a fragile bubble where we could exist without the weight of eyes on us. We lingered on repairs, though the chores were done. A loose stall door needed fixing, its hinges rusted from last winter's rains. Mara knelt first, her knees sinking into the straw, toolkit spread out like an offering. I joined her, the cool dirt pressing through my jeans, grounding me even as my mind raced. Our arms brushed as she handed me the wrench, her flannel sleeve grazing my skin, soft cotton over firm muscle. The contact was tender, unhurried, like the way she'd always moved through life, steady against my chaos. I tightened a bolt, but my hand shook slightly, the metal cold and unyielding in my grip. The craving hit hard then, a pull toward her touch that warred with the secrecy's weight. I wanted to lean in, to let my shoulder rest against hers, feel the heat of her body chase away the evening chill. But the wrench's rules loomed. Mara's family, my own tangled ties, the whispers that could shatter everything if we crossed that line. What if Mom walked in? What if the door creaked open and caught us in this quiet unraveling? The fear sat heavy in my chest, a stone I couldn't dislodge, making every breath shallow. Yet her nearness tugged anyway, promising something real amid the isolation I'd carried for years. Mara sensed it, her empathy cutting through like sunlight through cracks. She paused, wiping her hands on a rag, and looked at me, not with pity, but with a knowing that pierced my defenses. "You don't have to carry it all alone, Elena," she said, voice soft as the rustle of straw underfoot. Her words landed gentle, but they cracked something open, exposing the loneliness I'd hidden behind city walls and forced smiles. She'd always seen me, even back when we were teens navigating step-sibling awkwardness, her quiet presence a balm against the ranch's rigid expectations. Now, it felt deeper, like she understood the desires I'd buried, the way isolation had become both shield and cage. Physical sensations sharpened everything. Her warm breath ghosted my neck as she reached past me for a screw, close enough that I caught the faint scent of her. Sweat and soap mixed with the barn's earthy tang. My fabric shifted against hers, the hem of my shirt catching on her belt buckle, pulling us fractionally nearer. Heart thudding, I froze, the wrench slipping in my palm. It was innocent, these repairs, but the air thickened with what wasn't said, bodies attuned in the dim light. My skin prickled, aware of every inch between us, the subtle rise and fall of her chest mirroring my own quickened rhythm. In that shared space, isolation bonded us, a revelation unfolding without words. We'd both carved out solitude here, Mara in her long hours mending fences alone, me in fleeting visits that masked deeper running. But together it transformed, no longer empty but filled with possibility. Her hand steadied mine on the door, calluses rough against my knuckles, and for a moment, the world narrowed to us, the family's noise a distant dream. The repairs dragged on, hinges finally quieting under our hands, but the tension escalated, unspoken and electric. Lingering touches turned deliberate, eyes meeting in the half-light, pulling us toward the edge of what we'd held back. The dim barn light flickered, pulling shadows across Mara's face as we stood from the stall door. Our hands brushed again, this time without pretense, fingers lingering in the cool air. I felt the surrender then, a quiet giving in to the pull that had built all evening. No more excuses about repairs or chores. The space between us shrank, her breath warm on my cheek, the hay-scented air thickening with what we'd both denied. I stepped closer, my back against a rough beam, wood grain pressing into my palms like a secret I could hold on to. Mara followed, her eyes locking on mine, dark and steady in the half-light. It started slow, tender, her hand rising to cut my jaw, thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone. Safe boundaries held us, nothing rushed, just the gentle exploration of skin and space. Her lips met mine softly, a question I answered by leaning in, my fingers tangling in the soft fabric of her shirt at her waist. The kiss deepened, quiet gasps escaping as our bodies aligned, heat building in the cool barn. I tasted salt on her lips, felt the subtle shift of her hips against mine, all under the weight of dim light that hid us from the world. Her hand slid to my shoulders, grounding me, while mine explored the curve of her back, fabric bunching under my touch. Sensory details flooded in. The rough wood under my palms, splintering slightly as I gripped harder, anchoring against the rush. Her breath came in soft bursts, warm against my neck as she trailed kisses there, each one a quiet gasp that echoed in my chest. The barn's earthiness wrapped us, hay crunching under our shifting feet, the faint creak of beams overhead like a heartbeat. My skin prickled where her fingers slipped under my shirt hem, calluses grazing my side, sending shivers that had nothing to do with the chill seeping through the walls. It was intimate, unfolding in whispers and touches, desire weaving through the vulnerability we'd shared earlier. But the stakes heightened with every sound outside. The distant low of cattle, the wind rattling the door, echoes from the ranch house carrying faint laughter. Mom's voice drifted once, calling for Mara about some forgotten task, and my heart slammed harder, fear spiking amid the warmth. What if they came looking? What if the door swung open on this, us tangled in the shadows, secrets spilling out like hay from a burst bale? The risk made it sharper, desire laced with the terror of exposure, family judgments waiting just beyond the walls. Yet it pulled us deeper, Mara's hand tightening on my hip, as if to say we could steal this moment anyway. "You're shaking," she murmured against my lips, voice low and rough, vulnerability threading through. "Tell me if it's too much." Her words wove in desire and care, a bridge over the fear. I shook my head, pulling her closer. "It's everything," I whispered back, my voice breaking on the truth. The longing I'd hidden for years, now alive in her touch. "I've wanted this, you, since we were kids, but I was scared." She paused, eyes searching mine in the dim glow, her breath steadying mine. "Me too. The ranch, the family, it's like a fence we can't climb. But here, with you, it feels possible." Dialogue flowed soft, confessions slipping between kisses, desire blooming in the spaces we'd guarded. Her hand slid up my arm, fingers intertwining with mine, squeezing as another kiss landed, deeper, my back arching against the beam. Quiet gasps filled the air, hers mingling with mine, the world narrowing to the press of her body, the scent of her skin, sweat and earth, real and raw. Vulnerability hung between us, but so did the fire, building until I forgot the echoes outside, lost in the gentle push and pull. Then, brief fear interrupted. A crunch of gravel outside, footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. My body froze, heart thudding loud in the sudden silence. Mara's head snapped up, eyes wide, her hand still on my waist. The door handle rattled faintly. Wind? Or something more? We pulled apart, breaths ragged, the intimacy shattering like glass underfoot. The sudden intrusion shattered the veil, footsteps drawing nearer, forcing us into the shadows. The footsteps grew louder, deliberate against the gravel, cutting through the barn's heavy quiet like a knife. We scrambled back, Mara and I, hearts slamming in unison as we pressed into the shadows behind a stack of bales. The air felt thicker now, charged with the remnants of our warmth, my lips still tingling from her touch. I flattened against the rough wood, splinters pricking my palms, breath caught shallow in my throat. Mara squeezed my hand once, quick and firm, before letting go, her body tensing beside mine. The door creaked open, a sliver of moonlight spilling in, and there she was, Tessa, Mara's younger stepsister, slipping inside with a lantern in hand. She froze in the doorway, the light swinging low, catching us in its arc. Her eyes widened in the barn's half-light, pupils dilating like a deer's in headlights, taking in the disarray, the rumpled hay, our flushed faces, the space between us too small to deny. Tessa's lantern trembled slightly, casting jittery shadows that danced across her face, highlighting the shock etching her features. She was younger, barely out of her teens, with the same dark hair as Mara, but tied back in a hasty ponytail, her flannel nightshirt hanging loose over jeans. The intimate space we'd claimed shattered under her gaze, the sanctuary turning trap in an instant. I could see the pieces clicking for her, the closeness, the heat still hanging in the air, the way Mara's shirt hung askew. "You," Tessa started, voice a whisper that cracked, but she clamped her mouth shut, eyes darting between us. Panic surged in me, hot and choking, my mind racing to explanations that wouldn't hold. What now? She'd run to Mom, to Stepdad, spill it all over breakfast tomorrow. The forbidden tangle of stepsisters crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. My chest heaved, breaths coming too fast, the barn spinning in the dim glow. I wanted to bolt, to vanish into the night fields, but my legs locked, rooted by the weight of her stare. Mara stepped forward first, calm resolve settling over her like a shield, her voice dropping to an urgent hush. Tessa, wait. She raised a hand, palm out, steady despite the tremor I knew ran through her. Tessa's eyes flicked to her sister, then back to me, the shock deepening into something like confusion, maybe even hurt. The whispered plea came next, Tessa's voice barely threading the air as she edged closer, lantern lowered to hide the light. You can't tell a soul about this. The words hung between us, a pact forged in desperation, her gaze pleading now, wide and urgent. It wasn't accusation, it was complicity, a secret thrust upon us all, binding the three of us in the barn's stifling dark. My panic clashed against her resolve, a storm inside me raging while she stood firm, the older sister's poise cracking only in the set of her jaw. Tessa, please, I managed, my voice raw, barely above a rasp. But she shook her head, stepping fully into the shadows, the door clicking shut behind her. I won't, I swear. But this? Her whisper trailed, eyes searching Mara's face for answers, the half-light carving hollows under her cheeks. The physical freeze gripped us all, bodies still as statues, my back pressed to the bale, Mara's arm half raised, Tessa's lantern a dim anchor in her grip. Hearts pounded in the silence, mine a thunder in my ears, syncing with the rapid flutter I imagined in theirs. The air cooled on my skin, sweat drying clammy, the haze scent turning sour in my nostrils. In that frozen beat, the immediate choice crystallized. Trust in the witness bond, fragile as it was. Tessa wasn't running, wasn't screaming. She was here, whispering alliance, her loyalty to Mara pulling her into our circle despite the shock. I nodded, slow, forcing my breath even, meeting her eyes in the gloom. Mara exhaled, a quiet release, her hand finding mine again in the dark, squeezing once. The pact settled, uneasy but real, a thread tying us against the ranch's unforgiving dawn. We moved then, hasty separation pulling us apart, Tessa backing toward the door while Mara and I straightened clothes, smoothed hair. The shadowed confrontation waited just outside, words we'd have to swallow until the house slept again. Tessa backed away slowly, her lantern dimming as she set it on a low shelf, the flames sputtering in the cool draft seeping through the barn cracks. The door stayed shut, sealing us in that post-witness quiet, the air settling heavy around us like dust after a gust. Mara's reassurance came first, her voice threading the shadows, calm and low. It's okay, Tessa. We didn't mean for this. She stepped forward, bridging the space between her sister and me, her hand hovering near Tessa's arm without touching, as if testing the fragile truce. Tessa nodded, eyes still wide but softening, the shock ebbing into something weary, her shoulders slumping under the weight of what she'd stumbled into. My skin cooled fast, the heat from earlier touches fading to a clammy chill that prickled down my arms, sweat drying uneven against the night's drop in temperature. Dust motes hung suspended in the lantern's glow, settling back onto the hay bales like fine silt after a stir, mirroring the retreat inside me. I leaned against the beam, wood rough and grounding under my palms, trying to steady the raw edge of exposure that clawed at my throat. Everything felt peeled back now, our stolen moment laid bare, the barn no longer a refuge but a witness stand. How much had Tessa seen? The way Mara's fingers had lingered on my waist, the gasps we'd muffled against each other's necks. Panic twisted low in my gut, visions of family judgment flashing. Mom's disappointed silence, stepdad's stern questions at the breakfast table, the ranch's tight-knit world turning us into whispers around the fences. Tessa rubbed her arms, the flannel of her nightshirt rasping softly. I came for the lantern, forgot it after checking the horses. Her voice was small, edged with the fear we all shared now. Mara knelt beside her, eye level, her competence a quiet anchor. You won't say anything, right? It's us. Just trying to figure it out. Tessa met her gaze, the lantern light carving lines on her face. I won't. But the family? If they knew, Dad would lose it. Mom too. They'd say it's wrong, twisted into something ugly. The words unpacked the shadow hanging over us. Family judgment, a specter we'd both danced around for years. The rigid lines of ranch life, where anything outside the expected felt like a threat to the land itself. I grappled with it, the raw edge sharpening, my mind reeling at how one slip could unravel everything. Exposure wasn't just shame, it was isolation doubled, pushing me back to the city I'd fled, or worse, trapping me here under watchful eyes that saw too much. I slid down the beam to sit on a bale, knees drawn up, the straw prickling through my jeans. What if she can't keep it? I whispered, the fear spilling out, directed at no one but echoing for you, the way secrets can bind or break in the quiet. Mara turned to me then, crossing the dim space in 2 steps, her presence pulling me from the spiral. She sat close, not touching at first, but the air between us hummed with the earlier warmth. She will. Tessa's family, our family. Her words carried that steady resolve, empathy weaving through the doubt, reminding me of the girl who'd shared stolen glances years ago, understanding without judgment. Tessa watched us, her expression shifting from shock to a tentative nod. I get it. Sort of. Just be careful. She stood, grabbing the lantern, but paused, her free hand brushing Mara's shoulder, a silent pact. The empowerment glimmered then, faint but real, in the chosen secrecy that now tied us tighter. It wasn't just hiding, it was trust. 3 women against the ranch's unyielding rules, our bond forging in the dark. Mara reached for my hand finally, her fingers finding mine in the shadows, squeezing firm and warm, calluses pressing into my skin like a promise. The touch reaffirmed everything. The tenderness we'd crossed into, the desire that hadn't vanished but deepened with this risk. My pulse slowed under her grip, the raw edge softening, replaced by a quiet strength. We weren't alone in it anymore. The secret strengthened the tie, turning vulnerability into something shared, resilient as the barn's weathered beams. Tessa slipped out first, the door creaking shut behind her, leaving us in deeper dark. Mara held on a moment longer, her thumb tracing my knuckles. We'll get through this. The words hung, a bridge to whatever came next. But dawn shores loomed, the first light already graying the horizon, forcing us into the daytime facade where glances would hide and touches stay buried. Dawn broke, gray and insistent, pulling us from the barn's shadows into the ranch's unforgiving light. I rose early, muscles sore from the night's tension, the cool sheets clinging to my skin like a reminder of what we'd risked. Mara was already up, her silhouette moving through the kitchen, pouring coffee with that quiet efficiency. Tessa avoided my eyes over breakfast, her spoon scraping cereal bowl too loud, but she nodded once when Mom asked about the horses, our silent pact holding, fragile as morning mist. The daytime facade settled over us like dust on boots, polite smiles, chores divided, family chatter filling the air without touching the truth beneath. Daily ranch life tested our hidden connection from the start. Fences needed mending out by the creek, the sun climbing hot and relentless, baking the earth until it cracked underfoot. Mara and I worked side by side, hammers swinging in rhythm, but the space between us felt charged, every swing a potential slip. Stepdad rode by on the ATV, his gaze lingering as we straightened wire, and I felt the weight of watchers everywhere. Mara's dad scanning the horizon, Mom calling from the porch about lunch. One wrong look, one hand too close, and the secret could spill like water from a cracked trough. Yet it pulled us tighter, the hidden thread weaving through the ordinary, making sweat-slicked shirts and calloused hands feel like lifelines. Subtle gestures kept the intimacy alive amid it all. As we hauled water buckets to the troughs, her fingers brushed mine on the handle, fleeting, gone before anyone turned. It sent a spark up my arm, warm and secret, her thumb grazing my knuckle in a code only we knew. At noon, under the big oak by the barn, we shared a canteen. her knee pressing against mine in the shade, the rough bark digging into my back. No words, just the press of denim, the shared swallow of water that tasted of metal, and her nearness. These moments built us, small anchors in the storm of routine. But they came laced with risk. Tessa glancing our way from the coop, her eyes quick and knowing. A reminder that our circle had widened, vulnerable to fracture. Inside, tension gnawed. Guilt warring with the deepening affection that bloomed despite it. Guilt hit hardest at night, lying in my old bed, the ceiling beams staring down like judgmental eyes. What were we doing? Stealing touches in a place built on family lines we were blurring? The ranch had raised us to fit molds, straight paths, expected pairings, and here I was, letting affection root deeper. Mara's quiet laugh echoing in my mind like a forbidden song. It felt wrong, this pull, like betraying the life Mom had pieced together after Dad left. But the affection won ground, softening the edges, the way Mara's presence steadied me during afternoon feeds, her voice cutting through the bleats of goats, making the isolation feel chosen, not imposed. You know that tug, the way love sneaks in, quiet, demanding you weigh it against the world's sharp corners. Mara guided me through the family terrain, her stepsister's insight a map I clung to. "Keep it light with Dad," she murmured one afternoon as we stacked feed sacks in the shed, her voice low under the rustle of canvas. "He watches, but he misses the small things." She showed me the rhythms, how to laugh at Mom's jokes without drawing eyes, how to pass Tessa a tool without a shared glance that lingered. Her competence extended here, navigating the unspoken rules with a grace born of years in this soil, her hand steadying my elbow, once when stepdad neared, pulling away seamless. Tessa helped too, in her way, dropping hints about family moods, like when Mom was prying too close. Her whispers during evening walks, a buffer against the tide. Sensory cues marked our days. Fleeting touches that left skin tingling, like her palm against my lower back guiding me past a rutted path, gone before the dust settled. Shared silences stretched in the truck cab during supply runs. The engines hum our cover, her scent, earth and faint soap, filling the space. These built resolve, slow as roots pushing through clay, against external threats that loomed larger each day. Whispers from town reached us via radio gossip, judgments on those kinds that made my stomach twist. But Mara's steady gaze across the dinner table said we could weather it, our bond hardening like fence posts in dry heat. The growing resolve carried us, but a family gathering loomed that weekend, uncles, aunts, the whole web converging, heightening risks until the air felt taut, ready to snap. The family gathering arrived like a dust storm, swirling relatives into the ranch yard under a sky heavy with clouds. Uncles clapped stepdad on the back, aunts unpacked potluck spreads on the long picnic table, their laughter booming over the sizzle of burgers on the grill. Tessa hovered at the edges, her eyes darting to Mara and me whenever conversation lulled, a silent reminder of our pact. I forced smiles through the chaos, passing plates and nodding at questions about city life. But the risk pressed in, every shared glance feeling like a spotlight. Mara stayed close, her presence a steady hum amid the noise. But I caught the flicker in her eyes, doubt creeping in like shadows at dusk. It surfaced that evening, after the crowd thinned, the air cooling as we cleaned up under the porch light. Tessa had slipped away early, claiming a headache, leaving Mara and me alone with the scrape of chairs and the faint echo of goodbyes. We retreated to the barn, the door creaking shut behind us, sealing out the world's residue. The scent of hay hit fresh, mingled with the lingering smoke from the grill, grounding me as I leaned against a post. Mara paced the dirt floor, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust that settled slow on her jeans. "This can't keep going like this, Elena," she said, voice low and edged with vulnerability, stopping to face me. Her hands clenched at her sides, knuckles whitening, the quiet competence cracking. Tessa saw too much, and today, with everyone around, I felt it, the fear. What if she slips? What if they all find out? Her doubts poured out then, raw in the dim bulb's glow, her breath coming uneven as she rubbed her arms against the chill. I've always been the steady one here, fixing what's broken. But this, us, it scares me more than I thought. The ranch is all I know. Family, land, expectations. If they turn on us... She trailed off, eyes dropping to the floor, the weight of it pulling her shoulders down. You know that ache, the way doubt roots deep when love meets the world's hard edges, making you question if the ground can hold. I stepped closer, the pull instinctive, confronting the past biases that fueled my own fear. The city had taught me to hide, layering shame over desires like dust over furniture. Biases I'd carried back here, whispers from old friends, judgments that painted this wrong. It's my fault too, I admitted, voice steadying as I met her gaze. I ran to the city thinking distance would fix it, but I brought the fear with me. Believed what they said, that this kind of love doesn't fit ranch life, doesn't last. But that's their bias, not truth. The words hung, confronting the ghosts we'd both internalized, the rigid lines we'd let define us. Mara's eyes softened, vulnerability mirroring mine, and she nodded, a small release in her posture. A tender moment reaffirmed it then, her hand finding my cheek, thumb brushing slow over my skin, warm against the cooling air. I leaned into it, our foreheads touching, breaths sinking in the quiet. The contact healed something fractured, her touch a balm on old wounds, pulling us back from the edge. We're more than their rules, she whispered, lips grazing my temple, the intimacy soft and reaffirming. Bodies close, but boundaries held in the barn's familiar dark. It was healing, mutual. The way her fingers traced my jaw, grounding us in what we'd built. We revisited the barn's heart, moving to the stall we'd repaired that first night, the wood grain still familiar under my palms as I traced it. The scent evoked the first pull. Hay and earth, the memory of our initial brushes flooding back, sharpening the now. Remember that night? I asked, turning to her. She smiled faintly, hand covering mine on the beam. Dialogue flowed then, committing to the boundary with Tessa. We'll talk to her tomorrow, Mara said, voice firming. Set it clear, no slips, no judgments. She's in this with us, or she steps back. I nodded, the pact solidifying. Trust her, but protect us. That's the line. Her agreement came quiet, eyes locking on mine, the words weaving our resolve tighter. The emotional shift came gradual, secrecy transforming from burden to quiet power, a strength we claimed in whispers and shared breaths. No longer just hiding, but owning the space we'd carved, resilient against the fractures. Doubt lingered, but it fueled us now, turning vulnerability to quiet fire. Resolution neared with bold acceptance, the barn's shadows softening as we stepped out, ready to face what came next. We stepped out of the barn into the cool night air, the door clicking shut behind us like a seal on our pact. The ranch lay quiet now, stars pricking the sky overhead, the gathering's echoes faded to nothing. Mara took my hand, her fingers lacing through mine with a firmness that felt like roots taking hold in dry soil. No words at first, just the crunch of gravel under our boots, leading us toward the old oak at the field's edge, a spot we'd claimed as kids for secrets too small to voice. There, in the ranch's heart, our private commitment solidified, away from even Tessa's knowing eyes. She knelt first, pulling me down beside her, the grass damp and cool against my palms. Her flannel brushed my arm as she turned to me, eyes steady in the moonlight. I've thought about this, she said, voice low, threading through the night's hush. Us, here. Not hiding forever, but choosing our ground. Her words carried the weight of nights spent mending fences alone, now shared with me. The commitment bloomed quiet, her hand pressing a small, smooth stone into my palm, something she'd found by the creek, cool and unyielding, a talisman for what we'd build. I closed my fingers around it, feeling its edges bite gently, mirroring the sharp hope rising in my chest. We talked then, plans unfolding in whispers. Mornings stolen before chores, evenings in the barn's back corner, boundaries drawn clear with Tessa to keep our circle safe. No grand escapes, just this land, reshaped around us. Tessa's role evolved that next morning, shifting from witness to ally in our authenticity. She found us by the coop, her ponytail swinging as she scattered feed, eyes flicking quick but warm. "I talked to no one," she murmured, handing Mara a basket of eggs, her free hand brushing mine in passing. A subtle nod. Inclusion without intrusion. Over coffee later, away from Mom's bustle, she leaned in. "I get it now. The way you look at each other. It's real." Her empathy surprised me, born from her own quiet rebellions against ranch expectations, the boys she'd dodged in town. She became our buffer, deflecting questions with easy lies, her youth a shield we hadn't expected. In her, authenticity found a voice. Not loud, but steady, validating the pull we'd feared. The final sensory image came at dawn 2 days later, light spilling gold over the fields, illuminating our intertwined paths. We walked the fence line together, Mara ahead breaking trail, me following with the wire cutters, our boots sinking in the dew-slit grass. The air smelled of wet earth and wild sage, her flannel catching the first rays, casting long shadows that merged with mine. Tessa trailed a ways back, checking posts, her presence a quiet guardian. The light warmed my skin, chasing the night's chill, as Mara's hand found mine again over a gate, squeezing once before letting go. It was simple, profound. The paths we'd walked alone, now overlapping. Roots hidden but strong beneath the surface. Empowerment paid off in waves, love claiming space despite the shadows that still clung. No more running from the ranch's grip. We owned it now, turning secrecy into a quiet rebellion. Touches lingered in plain sight, her arm against mine at dinner, my laugh syncing with hers over shared jokes, testing edges without breaking. The fear didn't vanish, but it shrank, overshadowed by the warmth of what we'd forged. Family judgments loomed, a distant thunder, but our bond held like the barn's beams, weathered but unbowed. Lingering hope tempered the ongoing secrecy, a soft undercurrent in every glance. We dreamed aloud one evening, under that oak again, of a future where Tessa might stand with us openly, or where we'd carve our own plot from the land. It wasn't certainty, just possibility, fragile as the first green shoots after rain. Hope whispered that growth came slow, from hidden roots pushing through clay, demanding patience, but rewarding with depth. Reflection settled as we sat there, the stone still in my pocket, smooth for my thumb's habit. I'd come back fractured, isolation my armor, but Mara, and now Tessa, had shown me roots could entwine without snapping. Growth from those hidden places felt earned, not stolen. A quiet revolution in the soil we'd always known. The forward gaze pulled us then, eyes on the horizon where fields met sky, ready for whatever dawn brought next. Our hands brushed one last time under the oak, horizons stretching wide beyond the barn. A promise we'd chase together. Shadows be damned. If this story of hidden roots and quiet courage stirred something in you, subscribe for more tales of Sapphic love finding its way.